Even for me, even for the guy who's saying that this New York Jets football team could win as few as 4 or 5 games this year, I thought this was way out of line from ESPN. Jets today ranked 29 of 32 overall roster talent by ESPN. We're going to talk about that, some potential breakout candidates, and a little bit more. I'm Glenn Naughton with Jet Nation Radio and JetNation.com. Be sure to log into JetNation.com where you can register and become a part of what is the most active Jets message board on the web. So, in case you missed it, ESPN put out their annual 1 through 32 rankings. Every NFL team ranked by the level of talent on their roster. Now, I've said, and if you've been listening, you've heard me say that I'm fairly down on this team this season. I think there are too many things that have to go right in order for them to be competitive. But I've also said they do have a decent collection of good players. And in my mind, some good players in some key spots. We talk about the edge with Will McDonald and Jermaine Johnson, although they've lost some depth there, but that's still a good starting point. We've talked about the O-line being very good. There are some questions with Brandon Stevens, at least in my mind, but really Sauce, Michael Carter, having Thomas behind Stevens, I think there can be some quality play at corner. Like, there's some good things. Andre Cisco, we're going to talk about potential breakout candidates. He comes to mind right away at safety. So they have some quality players, and enough quality players that I feel that ranking them 29th out of 32 is a little bit harsh. Behind the Jets, the only teams finishing behind the Jets were the Carolina Panthers at 30, the Cleveland Browns at 31, and the New Orleans Saints at 32. Um, I mean, again, I'm not a homer. I think we know by now. I've spent most of this offseason saying I don't think it's very likely the Jets will be good this year. But are they the 29th most talented team? I mean, especially listen, if Olu Fashanu, if his floor is to play the way he did last year and his limited action, which let's face it, we all expect at least a little jump. We expect him to be a little better. But if we say his floor is the way he played last year with the rest of this O line, all Armand Membu has to be as a rookie is functional, and they're going to win up front a lot. And we talk about that. I mean, everybody who watches this game, who talks about this game, right? We talk about how it starts up front. You got to be able to win up front. And on offense, I expect the Jets to be able to do that. And then with the backs they have, we've talked about Brees, we've talked about Brilen, we've talked about the fact that you've got Donovan Edwards who's going to come in here and compete. And I think, is going to have a shot to win himself a roster spot. He'll compete with Isaiah Davis. Someone said the other day in the comments they think Davis is competing with Brilen Allen for the RB2 spot. That would really surprise me. That's not a knock on Davis. I just think Allen is the better player, or at least if I'm a team, I like the idea of having that battering ram coming in, late in the game or in, short yardage situations where he had a lot of success last year. 6 for 7, I believe, in situations where he was given the ball on 1 yard, 1 yard to go. So there's some talent here, folks, whether people realize it or not. Now let's take a look at what they're saying here. Again, this is from ESPN.com. One funny thing I thought on defense, they've got Michael Clemens listed as I mean, they do list 3 edges, to be fair. It's not as if they're listing him as a starter, one of 2 starters, but they do have him as a projected starter, Michael Clemens, but they've also got Jermaine Johnson, Will McDonald. So they've got Derek Nottie at DT, which we've talked about. Talked about it the other day. Like, who wins that DT spot? Nottie's got a shot. The fact he's a veteran, he's got a ton of experience. Maybe he does win it, but I think there are some other guys who will have an opportunity. But getting to the commentary from ESPN, not focusing so much on who they see as a starter, a backup, or what have you. They're saying biggest strength according to ESPN.com, and this is one that I would disagree with. Having just said that it could be a good group, I don't know if I would class it as their biggest strength. Biggest strength is corner, according to ESPN.com, where, of course, they cite Sauce Gardner, Michael Carter II being one of the best slots in the NFL. I think we all know that. But Brandon Stevens listed as the starter. If we go off that premise, which it is quite likely he wins that job, I think Thomas will push him at some point in the season and maybe take that job from him. But I think Steven starts out as a starting corner opposite Sauce Gardner. He gave up 800 plus yards passing last year. And if I'm not mistaken, I think it was 700 plus the year before. So we're talking about a guy who's given up over 1,500 yards passing over the past 2 seasons. And I'll tell you what, playing opposite Sauce Gardner and with Michael Carter in the slot, I would expect him to get challenged a lot, like a a whole lot. And he has previously. Teams have looked at him and said, "We can beat this guy. We can challenge this guy. You need a big play. You look his way." That's what teams have done, and they've had a lot of success doing it. Hence, all of the yards given up through the air by Brandon Stevens. So I would disagree there. Even though Armand Membu is a question mark, we can say, look, he's never taken an NFL snap. Fine, maybe he'll bust. Maybe he'll be terrible. Maybe, but if he's just okay, and with Fashanu, even if we don't see a jump, which I would expect to, if Olu Fashanu is the same guy this year that he was last year, and you got the rest of that O line, and Membu playing okay, that's a very good O line. For my money, that's the most talented group on the team. Most talented, yeah. I mean, offense, defense, either side of the ball. I think they can be the best, and the running backs sneakily could be up there too. I might even put them ahead of the backs because, well, Isaiah Davis again, not exactly proven. I mean, really, you could say the same about Brilen Allen. I just watching so much of him in college over the last few years. I just have a lot of confidence in him. But I do think the running back room is very talented. But the O line room to me is more impressive, a better collection of talent than the corners. So I kind of disagree with ESPN there. Biggest weakness, quarterback. Justin Fields. They replaced Aaron Rodgers with Fields. I'm just paraphrasing here what ESPN is saying. They mentioned how Fields was benched after 6 starts in Pittsburgh, has a career QBR of 47.1, which ranks 29th out of 34 qualified QBs during that span. He's highly impactful player as a rusher. See, here's the thing. This is why, and this is what I said when the Jets parted ways with Aaron Rodgers and brought Justin Fields in. At no point was I saying that Justin Fields is a better thrower of the football than Aaron Rodgers, at least up to this point in their careers. But for what Aaron Glenn wants to do in terms of running the ball and having a quarterback to run the ball, often, I think just from an efficiency standpoint, we could see Justin Fields be better production out of the offense with Justin Fields running the ball and then taking deep shots. We've talked about his need to improve his deep accuracy. And listen, I understand when I talk about Justin Fields and the deep ball, I contradict myself. Like I'm admitting that because on the one hand, you see like a couple of beautiful deep balls, whether it was in college or the pros, you see some good shots down the field, and then I'll have a couple that just like not even close. And I understand. Look, they're low percentage throws. Most quarterbacks miss. I get that, but it seems like his misses are way off. But then he'll drop a couple where only the receiver can get it. Some of them, honestly, almost. We've talked about this too, that some of those George Pickens catches last year, he puts a ball where it's like not only was his receiver the only guy who could get it, his receiver is the only guy in the NFL who could get it because George Pickens' hands are insane. And he made some great catches that I look at and go, as much as I love Garrett Wilson, we've seen some great catches from him too. But I feel like Pickens does it more regularly. Like Pickens does what he does. Just go watch him in college. To me, he was a first-round talent, and he is a first-round talent. He just, again, it was behind-the-scenes stuff, which we're now seeing play out in the NFL. You kind of see the way he carries himself, and you're like, okay, this is why he didn't get drafted. For those of you who missed it, he was, this one shocked, and this is when I thought, Pittsburgh was going to want to deal him, but I wasn't sure if anybody would take him off their hands. Closed out the year, final presser of the season. Pickens meeting with the media, and they said, are you excited about the direction of the offense next year? And he's like, no. I was like, wow, that's listen, I don't need you to lie to me, but even if you don't have to be that honest. If I'm a fan, if I'm a paying fan, you say, we got some questions, we'll see how it goes. Just flat out, no, not excited. So sorry, got a little sidetracked there, but listen, George Pickens is a phenomenal player, phenomenal talent. And he helped Justin Fields out quite a bit in a way that I know Jets fans expect Garrett Wilson to be able to do the same thing. I just don't know. My concern is that when the deep ball is off with Fields, it's way off, and sometimes when it's on, I don't even know if Garrett Wilson can pull in some of these balls. And you can say, "Oh, he did in college." Again, different level of competition, and we've talked about this many times. Garrett Wilson, the number of times Garrett Wilson just opened by a mile in college, where the didn't matter who his quarterback was, they weren't going to have to be pinpoint, precise, accurate with the football because he had all the room in the world to work with because there were no defenders within several yards. So Justin Fields, but however, calling him the biggest weakness, I would say Justin Fields is the biggest question mark. I think that's a more fair assessment in terms of strengths or weaknesses. I would say the Jets' biggest weakness is, and it's tough to say, most glaring hole. Let's say most glaring hole, and we've talked about this a fair bit too, is the lack of a true run stopper up the middle. And that's not to say Quincy Williams can't be a guy who plays well against the run, but you guys know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about that big space eating, beefy run plugger who can't get moved up the middle and just help shut down the run game. The Jets don't have that. So the interior D line worries me. And we've, with the smaller linebackers, that's then a knock-on effect, a domino effect. If a running back is able to get a hole up the middle, which I think we're going to see a fair bit of this year, whether it's Noddy or who, any of the journeyman tackles they brought on, maybe one of the UDFAs can do something. I do have some faith in those guys. But I think that if I had to pick a weakness for this team, I would say their run defense, which I guess you would include, right? I guess they're going position group here. I would say if you go linebacker and DT, the fact that the DTs or that the DT group lacks a big man and the linebackers are undersized, I think teams are going to have a fair bit of success running against the Jets this year. Hope I'm wrong. We'll see, but I think Justin Fields is the biggest weakness. The reason I think that's not going to pan out when, once the games start, I think we're going to see him make a lot of plays with his legs, and I think the offense will be fairly efficient, and they'll be able to make some plays. Now, let him connect on a few deep balls, and then it's an entirely new conversation if he can manage to do that. They've got the X factors for every team as well, this ESPN piece, and they've got the Jets starting tackles, Olu Fashanu and Armand Membu, as the X factors. They're saying Fashanu was 43 out of 66 in terms of his ranking. I'm assuming they mean per PFF. It doesn't say that. With an 88% win block rate as a rookie last year. Both can be plus starters. As I said, I thought Fashanu, for being a rookie, guy who hadn't stepped on the field before, some of his reps were at right tackle, which he'd never played before. So that's going to, impact his overall numbers. But I felt like he did a nice job at left tackle. So, X factor, I guess you can call it that, because if we are being completely honest, these aren't proven guys. These are just guys with very high ceilings who are very well thought of, who are now going to be starting for the Jets at left and right tackle this year with Fashanu and Membu respectively. Non-starter to know, they throw this one out there, center Josh Myers. We've talked about this. I have a really hard time believing that that's a competition. And I know I wrote an article saying, referring to it as such, because it was the John Simpson quote, which was sort of unprompted. If you remember, during OTAs, there was a question about the O-line, and John Simpson talked about how Tippmann and Myers were competing, which, you take to mean competing with one another for a spot. And I know Myers was Justin Fields' center in college. I know that he's got several years starting experience, but I'll tell you what, if he unseats Joe Tippmann, that would be absolutely shocking. And I'll tell you what, if that were to happen, which I'm not saying it's going to, but if Josh Myers manages to unseat Joe Tippmann, he better be lights out, because that's going to be perceived as New York Jets management stepping in and downgrading at the position to make the quarterback feel more comfortable. I don't think that would be the way to go. A lot of people have made a lot of it. You know, the reason I don't completely rule it out is because I think they are trying to make a nice, comfortable environment for Justin Fields. They want to do everything they can to give him every opportunity to succeed. And if they feel like having his center will help him, then maybe they do hand the job to Myers. Um, Not sure what that would mean for Joe Tippmann, but let's not go down that road. That's going a little, let's not get any craziness. Real quick, I mentioned some of the projected starters. I'm going to take a quick scroll here and just see if there's anything that jumps out. I mean, they've got Josh Reynolds as wide receiver too, which I'd said a couple months ago or a month ago, whatever it was, that after watching him, I felt more comfortable that that would be the case. They've got Lazard as receiver 3, rookie Mason Taylor as the starting tight end. No surprises, of course, along the offensive line. As I mentioned, they've got Derek Nottie at defensive tackle, Jermaine Johnson and Will McDonald listed as the top 2 edge guys, with Michael Clemens being the 3rd listed edge guy. They list 2 backers with Quincy and Jamie and Sherwood, Quincy Williams and Jamie and Sherwood. Sauce Gardner and the aforementioned Brandon Stevens at corner, with Michael Carter listed as 3, of course, the slot. And then Tony Adams and Andre Cisco listed as the safeties. And speaking of Andre Cisco, and I know you know, if you've been listening to me this offseason, my thoughts on Cisco, and we are going to go over that right now. Not just him, but did a quick little write-up earlier today on a few players who may be being overlooked, or just guys who I believe are going to have big time seasons in 2025. And some, and it's all relative. Maybe by that I mean some of these guys will have their best season, and maybe they've not done much up to this point, that type of thing. But kicking things off, my number one candidate for a breakout season for the New York Jets is the guy I just mentioned, Andre Cisco. For reasons I've covered several times on this show, I do believe that Aaron Glenn, I mean, this isn't a matter of what I believe, but we know that Aaron Glenn has done a phenomenal job of developing defensive backs, developing ball hawking safeties. Andre Cisco is a guy who was that in college and has shown flashes of that as a pro. This is not a reclamation project. This isn't a guy who looked good in college and hasn't worked out, and the Jets are going to try to get him up to, to be a quality NFL player. This is a guy who was a ball hawk in college. He was a very good player. He was drafted, had some really good moments for Jacksonville. Some of the interceptions he had there were very impressive. And this is just a matter of a guy moving on to a new team, that team being the Jets. And I think Aaron Glenn is going to help him get to that next level. And Andre Cisco, who the Jets brought in on a 1-year deal, could be joining that list, that ever-growing list of very good players Darren Muji has to figure out how to retain over the next 1 to 2 years. We've talked about the guys that we already know they're going to have to approach, whether it's Jermaine Johnson, Will McDonald, Joe Tippmann, that we all know the names, possibly Brees Hall, whatever they're going to do there, we don't know. But I think that after this season, Andre Cisco is going to be another one that they're looking at and saying, man, this guy's going to require big money if we want him back. So do we pony up the cash? Do we have the cash? Because a lot of guys to sign, but I really think Andre Cisco, clean up the tackling a little bit. I think that could be better at times, but all in all, his anticipation, the range that he shows on the deep back half of the field, I think this is a perfect spot for him. I think he's going to be a big time playmaker for the Jets this year. We will see in time. Next guy I want to go over, again, another one I've talked about, Quincy Williams. And you can say, Glenn, how does an all-pro have a breakout year? He already had his breakout year 2 years ago, and he's pretty damn good this year too. And I get it. I get what you mean. That would probably be my first reaction if I heard somebody say they thought 2025 was going to be a breakout year for Quincy Williams. But what I'm talking about is, yes, his all-around game, but I mean getting to the quarterback. And I said this a couple months ago when this defensive staff started coming together. And like, all right, Aaron, you look at Glenn's history, you look at Wilkes' history, you look at the way they like to get after the quarterback and send extra rushers, which is the opposite of what Quincy Williams has been playing it up to this point. So the frequency with which he was asked to blitz was, or is, I believe, going to be double or triple this year what it has been in recent years. So instead of seeing Quincy Williams have a 3 or 4 sack season, I think this is going to be a monster year for him. I think we're looking at 9, 10, 11 sacks for Quincy Williams to go along with the regular play that we've seen from him over the past couple seasons. And maybe that's what it'll take for him to get a little more respect. And it's not just the talent that Quincy Williams possesses. It's not just the scheme that the Jets are going to. It never hurts, and this isn't a knock on Quincy Williams, but it never hurts when a guy is playing for a new contract, which is the case with Quincy Williams. I think the biggest issue there that he's facing is that he's in his early 30s. And someone mentioned that to me the other day. I had a little back and forth on Twitter with somebody who thought, well, the Jets aren't going to bring him back because Aaron Glenn wants young players. I get that, but I don't think Aaron Glenn is like, I never want to have a guy on my roster who's 33. Like, I don't think he's that. Like, yes, it is a young man's game, but there's nothing wrong with having a couple of veterans, a couple of guys who've been around for a while, who have some experience for the young guys to learn from. And I'm not sitting here saying they're going to hand him a huge contract. I would like to see Quincy Williams get like a 3-year deal. He's actually, I think he's about to turn. I said early 30s. I'm talking about, we were saying by the end of the contract in that exchange. He's 28 now. He's going to be 29 soon. I would have no problem giving him a 3-year deal and let him hang around till he's 32 and then address it there. Look at give him a 1-year deal at that point, depending on how he's playing. But I'm certainly not giving him a 5-year deal at 28, 29 years old. But another important thing with him, though, is the low miles. Didn't play at a major program, didn't get on the field a ton early on in his career. So it's not like he's, the example I gave was CJ Mosley. He's not CJ Mosley, who played 1,000 snaps a year every year for 5, 6, 7 years before the injury started to pile up. That's not really the case here with Quincy Williams. So I think Quincy Williams, from a pass rushing standpoint, absolutely a candidate to have a big time breakout season. Let's go to the other side of the ball for just a minute. We've got 5 players total. We got one more defensive player and 2 offensive players. First offensive player, running back Brilen Allen. This has a lot to do with again, just as with Quincy Williams, with the switch in philosophy. I think this is going to be a run-heavy team, and I don't think the Jets have made any bones about that. They've said that publicly. The fact that this team is going to try to control the clock, ground the pound. I think Brilen Allen is going to see a ton of carries. We have seen multiple injuries in the past for Breece Hall. So with the heavier workload, that's something to keep an eye on if he's able to stay healthy. If he is not, then that means even more carries for Brilen Allen. Hopefully not. Hopefully that's not an issue and everyone stays healthy. But history suggests, Breece Hall's injury status is worth watching. And even if, like I said, even if everybody stays healthy, I think Brilen Allen's going to have enough carries to log some impressive numbers. And I would hope, as I tweeted a couple weeks ago, I would hope that the plan is to make him the guy on the goal line and short yardage situations. If that's the case, we can see some decent touchdown numbers, maybe get 6+ touchdowns out of Allen, and some decent production on the ground. Last year, production didn't match the playing style. I think you expected it. You expected him, or I expected him. I thought he'd be like a guy who get you 4.5 a carry. And maybe those numbers, on the year would dip because I thought he was going to be the goal line guy from the 1, from the 2, 3rd and 1, from the whatever yard line. I thought he was going to get a lot of short carries, 3 yards in a cloud of dust, and that would bring his average down. But he wasn't the guy as often as he should have been in those situations. But I think he's, again, another top candidate. Keep an eye on him. Brilen Allen. Next one, we'll go one more defense, one more offense. We'll go with offense first. Let's get this one done, because this was a piece. I wrote this up on jetnation.com. It's on the front page. Check it out if you want. The way I describe this, the way I explain this, is that I'm the first one to admit that a big part of this, it's not entirely, but a big part of this one, this is some wishful thinking. Okay, but Jeremy Ruckert. And he's what I mean when I say I don't necessarily mean all of these guys are going to have what constitutes a breakout season for these guys. Now, as unfortunate as it is, Jeremy Ruckert's been so unproductive that like a 500-yard season would be a breakout for him. And honestly, that would be, in my mind, fantastic. That would be enough to show you, all right, this guy can play. He's not Brock Bowers. He's not George Kittle. He's not Kelsey. He's not fine. But if he can be a guy who gets you between, 450 and 550 and a few touchdowns in the red zone, that's absolutely fine as a tight end too. And for Jeremy Ruckert, that would constitute a breakout. Now, it is, as I said, honestly, a big part of it is wishful thinking, but it's also, let's not forget, just like Garrett Wilson is, and we're expecting big things because he's back with his college quarterback. Same goes for Ruckert. Ruckert's playing with the same quarterback he played with in college. There should be a level of comfort there that he hasn't had with other guys. And then, of course, you've got the fact that, and I don't say this to, go after Ron Middleton, nice enough guy, very likable coach, but show me a tight end that got better while Ron Middleton was here. No such animal exists. Just didn't happen. So let's hope against all whatever against let's hope that what our eyes have seen to this point are not the whole story, and that Jeremy Ruckert with some better coaching will be a bigger factor and have himself a nice year where he could listen, get the guy touch. If things aren't going to work out for Ruckert with this team and you're going to move on from him, get him open in the end zone. Get him a touchdown. Lifelong fan, give him a picture he can hang on his wall for the rest of his life, celebrating a touchdown in a Jets uniform. Let's get him in the end zone one time. Last but not least, defensive side of the ball. Once again, this time I'm going defensive tackle Leonard Taylor. And people have gotten on me this offseason accusing me of not, you don't realize how good Taylor is. You're not talking about him when you're discussing run stoppers. That's because he's not a run stopper. Primarily he's not a run stopper. He's got some decent film against the run, but to me, he's more of a penetrating, attacking DT. So he's, there'll be times he's on the field with Quincy Williams, but he's the guy that should be coming in when Quincy Williams is getting a breather, at least in my mind. But with an attacking defense, if the Jets are going to get as aggressive and blitzy as we think, that's going to free guys up, and guys up front are going to have chances to make plays. And if they have the talent to do it, which I believe Taylor does, with Quinnen undoubtedly looking at another season of a heavy dose of double and triple teams, which is fine. But he's got to beat some for the money he makes. He's got to beat some of those more often. But I think Taylor is a guy who, we talked about him pre-draft as a guy who could be an early round pick. And then, of course, he kind of has a disappointing season, doesn't get drafted, lands with the Jets, and played well last season. Did a nice job in limited opportunities. So I would expect increased opportunities this year with a more aggressive defense. So another guy who I think this season people are going to come out of it and go, wow, we didn't really expect that from him. He had the one, he had his rookie year where he looked solid at times. But I look back at what he did in college and the good reps he had last year, the positive reps we saw from him last year, and I just think this guy could be a really good player. And now he's in a scheme that's going to allow him to attack and play to his strengths, which is what you always want. So those are the guys that come to mind for me. There are, like, Joe Tippmann's another one. I feel like Joe Tippmann hasn't, while he has been good, and I think he is the center of the future, I feel like Joe Tippmann, there's more there than we've seen so far. But Andre Cisco, Quincy Williams, Brilen Allen, Jeremy Ruckert, Leonard Taylor, those are the guys I'm pointing my finger at to say most likely players to have big breakout seasons this year for the Jets. That'll wrap this one up, folks. Just wanted to come on, talk about the number 29 ranking from ESPN, as well as the potential breakout candidates. Got any of your own? Throw them in the chat. Throw them in the comments below. Be sure to like, follow, subscribe. Be sure to go to jetnation.com. As I say, register, become a part of what is the most active Jets message board on the web. Have a good one, Jets fans.